back to my channel. In today's session, I will explain how the database and the PHP code work together to handle the sign-in process in our e-commerce project. I will show you how we design the necessary tables in the ER diagram and how we forward engineer them and how the PHP code checks credentials step by step. So, before coming to this stage, we have already learned how to design a responsive sign-in, sign-up page using HTML, CSS, JavaScript and Bootstrap. Next, we have learned how to program the user sign-up process including input validations. And in today's session, we will learn how to program the user sign-in process with PHP functions. Okay, so now let's get started. First, I will show you the ER diagram. Here you can see that for the sign-in process, the main table is the user table. It stores account details such as the email, password, first name, last name, mobile number, gender and the status. Then we have the user table that is connected to two supporting tables, which is gender table and the status table. So the gender table has the gender ID and gender name. For example, values could be 1 assigned to male and 2 assigned to female. In the user table, we only store the ID, not the full word. So it makes it easier to store the data because it doesn't take that much of a storage to store it. Then we have the status table. This has the status ID and the status name. For example, 1 is active and 2 is inactive. So when a user tries to log in to the system checks if this user is active or not. As you can see, the ER diagram shows how data is organized. For sign-in, we mainly use the email and the password. The database table stores all the registered users and sign-in checks if the input matches these records. Now that we understand the ER diagram, let's see how it becomes a real database through forward engineering. In MySQL Workbench, we design the ER model first. Forward engineering converts the ER diagram into actual SQL tables. For example, the user table. And so, in forward engineering, it bridges the gap between the design and the implementations. The ER model automatically generates a working database schema so that it transfers the data smoothly. Okay, now let's talk about the database connection.php. Here we created a class called database. Think of a class as a blueprint that holds method and functions we can reuse. Inside it, we have a variable called connection. So it's also marked as static, which means it belongs to the class itself, not to an individual object. This connection will hold our link to the database. So let's move on to the DB connection, that means database connection. So as you can see, public static function setup connection. So this is the function that actually creates the connection to the MySQL. So if is at database connection checks if connection already exists. So if not, it runs a new MySQLi to hold the local host, root and the password, the project database name and the port. As you can see, here I have given the localhost, the server where MySQL is running. So in this case it's my own computer, so the root will be the MySQL username, and here it's the password, the MySQL password, and here the database name we want to see, we want to use, and 3306 means the port number for MySQL. For this function, make sure we always have a valid connection before running any queries. This function is for insert, update, delete queries. First, it calls setup function to make sure the database connection is ready. Then it runs a query passed in $Q. For example, database IUD insert into user F name, that means first name, L name, that means last name, values as Anna Smith. Also, this would insert a new record. Then we have the query called select. So this is the function for select queries. Again, it ensures the connection exists, then runs the SQL query, then stores the result in the result set, then it returns that result back to wherever we called it. For example, $result assigned to database search, inside brackets we have select query from the user. This would get all the users from the user table. So as you can see, I will explain why this is useful. Normally in every PHP file you'd have to write out the connection code again and again, but by putting it inside a class we can just reuse it everywhere. So database, for insert, update, delete query, you can use the IUD, database IUD, and then for the select query you can use database search. So this keeps our code clean and avoids repetition. So I will also explain how this connects to the sign-in process. Whenever a user tries to log in, sign-in process.php calls. That means $result, that is assigned to database search, inside brackets we have the select from user where email, $email, and password is assigned to $password. That means it's using our connection class to check the email and the password inside the database. If there's a match, it returns success. If not, it returns an invalid email or password. So in simple words, you can say that the connection.php is like a bridge between your PHP code and your database. It makes sure the database is connected and ready, so all the other files like sign-in process.php can just focus on their job without worrying about connections. Okay, now let's move on to the JavaScript Ajax sign-in. So as you can see, the first one that I have highlighted is the function sign-in. This means it is a function named sign-in. Functions are like small programs inside our bigger program. This one will run whenever the sign-in button is clicked. Next we have var email, variable email, that is assigned to document.getElement by ID and .value. So here we are getting the values that the user typed. So for example, document.getElement by ID email finds the input field with the ID email. Then we have the .value, that means it actually grabs the text that was typed inside the field. So we do the same for the password field. So now the variables email and password are holding whatever the user typed. Okay, now let's move on to the other line where it says var request, that is assigned to new XML HTTP request. Here it says we create a new XML HTTP request object. So think of it as a messenger that can talk to the server without reloading the page. This is what makes Ajax special. Then the next line it says request.onReadyStateChange, that is assigned to a function. Here we tell the messenger when the server replies from this piece of code to check the reply. That's what onReadyStateChange means. It listens for the changes in the request status. And then we have inside a if-else statement, if request.readyState, that is equal to 4, and request.status, that is equal to 200. So it means here the ready state is in 4 steps. That means the request is finished and the status is 200. That means the server replied successfully, so no errors. So this line is basically if the server has finished answering and everything went well, continue. So let's see the continuation of this one. The var response is assigned to request.response text. Here you can see whatever message the server PHP sends back is stored in response. For example, it could be success or invalid email or password. Then in another if statement we have response, that is equal to success. So here we can check the server's reply. If the reply is success, it says redirect to the user home.php. So this is like letting them inside after checking their ID card. Then we have in an else document.getElement by ID, msg1, that means message1 dot inner HTML, that is assigned to a response. So it says here if the reply is something else like an error message, show it to the div ID message. That way the user sees what went wrong without reloading the page. So after that we have a line that says request.open. Inside brackets we have post and then the sign in process.php true. So here post means the method that we are using to send the data securely. So there is also another method that we call as get, but as you can see post is actually secure than get, because post doesn't show the backend part and it sends securely the data to the other side, but get shows the even the user's information to the main index page. Okay, now let's talk about what is sign-in process.php means. The file request.send. This means finally we are actually sending the data to the server, which is the index.php. Here we have our sign-in box, and mainly we have our email, our inputs, email and password. So you can see here we call our email as in ID and password also. So this uniquely identifies for the JavaScript. And here you can see that we have the button that is that runs on click function. So when you click it, it runs to the sign in function. And over here you can see that we have our message that shows error messages dynamically by the ID MSG1, which is message 1. Okay, now let's move on to the backend code, the sign-in process.php. Here first we have started off with the PHP calling, then we start off with the session start, and we include the connection.php which we have made before. Here it connects to the database using our database class. So if you can see, we have called our email and the password through pause method, so that we can get the email and the password from the JavaScript. And through the database search, we have used the select query to select from the user table where, that means from the email and the password. So it checks the database for a matching user, and if it's there, if the user has already signed up, then it redirects to sign in. That means the user is updated in the database. So over here you can see that $n assigned to rs, that is equal to numRows, which is the number of records found. So through the if else, we will find if the output is a success or an error message. So as you can see, there is a fetch assoc method in PHP where we specifically call the MySQL extensions, which is used to retrieve a single row from a database result as an associative array. So it means it retrieves a row to call and then fetches the next available row from the MySQL result object. So an associative array means the returned array that uses the column names from the database as keys and the corresponding arrow values as their respective values. Okay, I will again explain this because it will be more easy if we explain it according to the code that we have typed in. So here the user enters the email and the password. then it clicks the sign in button, which means on click, that is assigned to the sign in function in JavaScript. So then JavaScript sends the AJAX request to the sign in process. So then the PHP checks the database whether there is a user named after the email and the password, and if it's correct, it redirects to the home.php, or if it's wrong, I will give a wrong password, and if it's wrong, it shows a error message as in the div id that I called message. So this video shows that how the front end, back end and the database work together for a sign-in system. The ER diagram and forward engineering design shows that it creates the design and creates the tables. The database class handles all the database operations, and the HTML form collects all the user input, and the JavaScript AJAX technique sends the data to the server without reloading, and the PHP validates credentials and sends the response. So this ensures only registered users can log in, forming the foundation for secure web applications. This ensures only registered users can log in, forming the foundation for secure web application. That's it for today's tutorial. Thank you.